You are listening
You are listening
You're listening to
to Not
to
Not Elsewhere
Elsewhere Classified.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Not Elsewhere Classified podcast. Today in the podcast, we are continuing our conversation with Kengia Sabree. If this is your first time listening or watching this podcast, welcome. You could check out our podcast on Apple Podcast or any of the podcasting platforms, but also check out our podcast on YouTube. We have just recently reached and surpassed 100 subscribers. So thank you to those that have subscribed to this channel. Make sure you hit that notification bell so that way you get notified for future guests. So in part 2 of this conversation, we talk about Kengia's journey into obtaining a doctorate's degree and how it intertwined with what she was doing as the academic chair for health information technology at St. Petersburg College in Florida. It was very interesting because most guests that I have master's degrees, and they've explained the process that entails with obtaining a master's, but I was very much interested in what was involved in the doctorate's degree and the program and all of that stuff that she had to do. But it was very interesting and she did learn a lot. So without further ado, here is part 2 of my interview with Dr. Kengia Sabree. Enjoy.
Right away.
Really?
Right away. So I don't feel like I needed it. I don't feel like that at all. So I started in my role as academic chair in 2016. But at that point, I was surrounded by so many doctors. I felt like the low man on the totem pole, right? So not only that, let's be honest, going into education, you don't make a whole lot of money, right? So being a doctor paid more. So I'm just like, okay, so I came from a corporate job. I'm going to be totally honest. At that point, I was making $98,000 a year. So transitioning into education, I took a big pay cut. So I was just like, yes, it was for job security. Yes, it was because it was something that I loved, but I need to think, and I'm so thankful that me and my family, we didn't feel that pay cut as much as I thought we would, but pursuing that higher education allowed me to close that gap, even if it were just a little bit. So that's what made me pursue. So it took me about a year. I started pursuing my doctorate degree in 2017 and I finished in 2020.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what was that like? I'm asking because
Yes.
so I am blown away by people who get their masters. Just that in itself. And I looked at the Masters of Health Informatics at Florida International University and the video, and you could see in my face, I'm like, wow, that's a lot of stuff, 11 courses, capstone, and I think some type of kind of an externship, whatever, or internship opportunity.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, that's a lot of work, 11 months. But then just looking at the courses and the complexity, just looking at them, I'm like, I know what it takes to get into that class, or what is to be expected when you see the title of the course, like what is that you have to deal with. And I was, at the time that I looked at it, because I kept on getting it in my Facebook feed, right? I keep on getting it. I'm like, okay, let me just do this for this video and let me see what it looks like and kind of get a reaction. And I cringed. I'm like, that's a lot of work. So I can imagine a master's program being a lot of work. And I know if Marlene is listening, she has I think 2 master's degrees. I'm like, my gosh, how could you handle that?
Oh my goodness.
And so my question for you then is, because I have no idea. I understand what a master's degree is, but I can't even imagine what a doctorate degree would entail compared to a master's. Could you explain that?
It's a lot, and it really depends. It depends on, so I earned an EDD, which we consider, it's called like a professional doctorate degree
Okay.
versus a PhD. The
Mhm.
PhD is more research focused. That's the Doctor of Philosophy.
Okay.
And I've talked with people who spent 6 to 7 years in a PhD program.
Yikes.
I knew I didn't have it in me.
Mm.
I just knew there was just no way after earning a master's that I can go back and spend that much time. So
Wow.
I started looking at the EDD programs, which were about half the time,
Mhm.
right? So about 3 to 4 years. I said, I think I got that much in me. I do.
Mhm.
The courses were, I mean, they were a lot of courses. I was very thankful that, I got 3-week breaks in between,
Wow.
that helps. But then, very similar to the dissertation, you still have that capstone project. You still have to conduct research. But again, I believe in divine timing. I really do. And I had a dean at the time who asked me, she said, how in the world are you going to be able to complete this degree when you're managing a program? She said, and you have a lot to manage in that program. I mean,
Mhm.
we have almost 300 students.
Wow.
Um, so we are an AS program, AS and HIT, but we also have the medical coding certification, and then we have the healthcare informatics certification. So she's just like, your hands are full. So she said, you need to figure out a way to make your research about your work.
Right.
That was
That's
the
right.
best
Mhm.
advice, the best advice. And I didn't understand at the time. I was like, what does she mean? So as I'm going through the courses, I still didn't put those pieces together just yet. It took about a year into the program when
Really?
they
Wow.
when they told us our options. So your options were with like a program evaluation. I mean, they had a couple different things that you could have done. And I was just like, I can evaluate my program. I could do that. Like, this is something that I do every day. And sometimes when you are on the job, you don't really have the time to dig into the data the way that you want to and draw these conclusions. So I said, this was perfect.
Mhm, mhm.
But then not only that, so about 6 months later, I got a letter from Cahin and we were undergoing accreditation
Oh,
and I
wow.
almost lost it. I said, how am I going to manage this program? I'm going to finish my classes and then go through accreditation. And they gave me a year notice, right?
Mhm,
A
mhm,
year notice.
mhm.
I didn't think that far. I didn't think of where I would be in my program a year from now. So as I was finishing the research, I mean, I was neck and neck with accreditation.
Mhm.
And all of my research were questions that they were going to ask, data that they were going to need.
Amazing.
So I'm telling you, you cannot make this stuff up. It worked out perfectly. And I got my degree about 2 weeks before my site visit. About 2 weeks before my site visit. I mean,
Wow.
it was that close. It was that close. It was fantastic. But that's how I was able to do it. So, yes, the courses were intense, but I had one goal in this degree program. So, outside of evaluating my program, of course, I really wanted to focus on becoming a better writer. That was my goal throughout this whole
Mhm.
program.
Yep.
I knew I had challenges in terms of writing. I knew that even throughout my multiple degrees, that's where I struggled the most. So I immersed myself in learning APA and really understanding research. And that part I just fell in love with. I did.
Really? Mm.
So though it was intense, I think when you like and appreciate the work that you're doing, it gives you a form of relief. It doesn't feel so hard. It doesn't feel so bad. And the 3 years just flew by. To me,
Amazing.
it did. Yeah.
Amazing.
Mhm.
What it sounds like is just full integration, right?
Right.
When you look at when you look at your doctorate's education, right, and you're looking at it, I think for most people who just like me, when I take on something big and like a challenge or another task, we tend to kind of like separate. This has to be here. This has to
We
be
do.
here. For example, let's say, for example, also this YouTube channel, I learned a lot of integration, right? So in terms of workflows in all of this. So it's
Mhm.
like, okay, how can I make all of this fit with a full-time job, with a weekly
Right.
podcast and stuff like that? And so I learned the
Mhm.
same way you did when you
And your
realize like, when you realize like,
family.
okay, you are in a part of you already have your HIT program. I can't believe 300 students. That's a lot of students. Wow. I mean, that's amazing. And then what was I going to say? Trying to
Mhm.
implement, when you're in doctorates, you have your program, you integrate it, you integrate the workflows, you already have the data, you have the work set, you have a source of some things, that you can pull
Right.
off of
Right.
to integrate it in your assignment. And when I look at it this way here, it's the same way. It's again transferable skills, transferable. You got to transfer a lot of times, and kind of
Right.
interlock a lot of things to make the workflow work for you. So for in this
That's
case
right.
here, it's like I'm trying to create a workflow of just content. How can I make the content in a timely
Mhm.
manner? Because now, I have a son who does football and I go to his football games on Saturday. I'm limited to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday being my editing schedule, and how can I make all of that
See,
work and trying to integrate a YouTube channel? It's a lot of work. And I can get a
it
sense
is.
of,
And you do a lot.
it is a lot. And I'm like, I don't realize how much I do. But then again, my thing is, let's
Mhm.
say I drop the podcast, I drop the YouTube channel, I'm gonna go crazy just doing a full-time job. I'm
See? Yeah.
I'm
Right.
like, wait, what do I do? What am I gonna do now? Like my kids are self to do, like they're in the rooms, they're doing their homework, they're doing this, and I'm just, my wife is at work. What am I gonna do? Am I just gonna
It's
sit here and
true.
twiddle my
Yeah.
thumbs and watch Netflix? No, I'm gonna do something and make
Something
something. So
meaningful, something productive. You're giving back to your profession. It's fantastic.
that's right. That's right. And so
It's
that's the only thing that I can find myself doing, other than, I don't know, could I be running? Could I be exercising? But I think I find more satisfaction just
That's
creating
right.
these things, right?
Mhm.
And so another thing that you mentioned was the writing, and I'm glad you mentioned that. It's like that's something that I want to do more of, right? And so
Okay.
doing the
Mhm.
podcasting became like an excuse for me not to write articles, right? But I think there is power in articles, powers in writing in papers and stuff like that. I would like to at some point, and you're probably thinking about it yourself, writing a textbook, writing a book, so that way
No,
no, you're not at
no.
that
I
point
thought
yet.
about that like 5 years ago.
Really?
5 years ago.
What
And then I was
happened?
just like, move on. Just move on. I don't
Really?
know. I don't know. Maybe I'll circle back. Yeah.
Because I was
It's a
thinking,
lot. A lot goes into it.
so I've talked to a couple people who've written books, and I
Hmm.
mean, I the way I look at it, and I've mentioned this a lot, like I could take, like, say for example, this podcast episode, I could take some content from there and make it its own section, you know. I could have a section of people pursuing their masters. You yourself would be a section on obtaining your degree. So would have to go back to you and kind of talk about stuff and kind of get some information and make that a section. And so with me
It's true.
having a portfolio, I think that's the key is when you have a portfolio
Mhm.
to draw from, you can create a book. So I'm sure, do you have a portfolio of the things that you've written when you were in your masters and your doctorates that you can pull from to make a book?
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
you don't want to make a
Absolutely.
book.
And I find myself so no. So when I was in I find myself going back to those writings sometimes.
Mm,
Um, there's something about me, I don't like to, if I'm thinking of a topic or if I'm working on something and I know that I've worked on it before and I had some really great thoughts, I don't like to start over. I want to go back and see how my old thinking was and
yeah.
kind of refresh that material or see how my thought process has changed since then. So I love reflecting on some of my older writings. I do. Mhm.
Yeah, I think that in itself is already content in itself. Like you
It
go back
is.
to years ago, and like so for example, I want to do a video on a LinkedIn article that I did back in 2015, right? And so it's an
See?
article, yeah. So like it becomes its own content where I refer to that article, I talk about it. This is what I was thinking back then. Let's see what my thinking is now and how it transferred from from 2015 up until now. So that's a lot of content from there. Let's move into another topic, right? So let's get into you. So we've talked about your academia. You're still currently the academic chair in St. Petersburg College. You got your doctorate's degree, right? You have your master's degree, of course. And now let's talk about the qualified, which you recently started this year,
Yay.
right? So let's talk about that. How did
Early this
you
year.
how did you get into starting the qualified?
So the qualified is a concept that I've thought about for many years. And I didn't necessarily want to create it myself.
Hmm.
I was hoping that somebody else would create it. And I pitched the idea a couple different times. People were like, oh, great idea. But nobody really bought in the way that I was hoping,
Hmm.
or nobody decided to take it and run with it. So the need still exists, right? So I said, you know what? I'm just going to do it myself.
Hmm.
And that's how this came about. You know?
So what is it exactly? Could you
So the
explain what it
qualified
entails?
is
Yeah.
okay. Absolutely. So the qualified is an educational support service made up of HIM professionals, and we have several goals. I was going to say four main goals, but there's four aspects to the company. One is to help HIM professionals become qualified by earning their certifications.
Hmm.
So we offer workshops and boot camps and tutoring for various HIM certifications. We help them maintain their certifications by offering affordable CEUs.
Hmm.
And then we help them, if they need to, find their place in the industry. So we offer search and recruitment services. We promote opportunities just to bring awareness to the profession, but also to help employers find qualified employees, to help them find that right fit, just take away all that pressure of interviewing and finding candidates and things like that. And then lastly, as I mentioned to you earlier, the qualified to lead, which is it's going to be a leadership academy to help individuals become leaders in HIM.
Nice. Now, does it necessarily, because when I hear the qualified, right? It's the same thing. Like, for example, just something to think about. Like, for example, I started this podcast, Not Also Classified, and it was geared toward medical coders, health information management, CDI. And 4 years later,
Mhm.
it's like, okay, I'm interviewing the same people, in and out. And now I'm beginning to think about expanding my guest base to more healthcare, right? And eventually down the line, kind of move from healthcare and include information technology. And, you see where the audience kind of grows out from there. Is that something that the
Right,
qualified
right.
would include? Because you mentioned the leadership aspect, the leadership academy. Can that
Mhm.
transfer? Can that be transferable skills from HIM to anybody that's outside of HIM?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would love to. So I'm curious to see how this grows, right? Because some of the people that I work with, they also have other credentials,
Hmm.
just in healthcare in general. I mean, Noelle Del Brown, she's a
Oh, you got her in.
registered, yeah, registered medical
Awesome.
assistant, so there's people who are saying, hey, do you prep for that? A surgical tech, do you prep for that? So I'm thinking eventually I can see us getting there. And also the leadership academy, I always wanted to to teach about becoming a leader in HIM, but I think that one too was my husband, because my husband, these are things that people should know, or these are like leadership concepts that can be across the board. It doesn't necessarily have to just be HIM or healthcare.
Right.
These are just traits that's transferable.
Hey everybody, if you are enjoying the podcast so far, please consider liking this video and also subscribing to the Not Elsewhere Classified podcast YouTube channel so you can be notified for future videos. Also, please check out the Medical Coding Geek YouTube channel, where I also post videos on the medical coding, CDI, and HIM community. Also, check out medicalcodinggeek.com, where we offer a lot of services, including our Facebook groups. You can go to medicalcodinggeek.com/services. Check out our Facebook groups, including Medical Coding Geeks, the RHIT and RHIA exam support group, the CDI network. We have a marketplace where you can sell and buy your books. We also have the CEU hit list. If you're interested in free CEUs, I release a monthly list of free CEUs that I find on the internet. Also, you could follow us on social media. Not Also Classified. Everything is at NEC Podcast. For Medical Coding Geek, it's at MED Coding Geek. You could find us on Facebook, Instagram, and we are also on TikTok. If you are listening to this episode, please make sure to subscribe and rate our show on Apple Podcasts. All the ratings and the reviews help our show get noticed. Also, I wanted to take a moment to promote our partners. You could check them out at medicalcodinggeek.com/partners. They include the Haugen Consulting Group, RadRx, Project Resume, Renowned Talent, and so much more. And of course, you could find me, Brian Cui. My last name is spelled CUI on LinkedIn. So without further ado, let's return back to the show. Yeah, I like the leadership aspect. I don't know if you ever talked to, is it Jim? No, yes, Jim Zellum. I don't want to say John Zellum because he's a doctor, but there's Jim Zellum who his brother John had me interview Jim Zellum on leadership, and he has a book. I don't know if you want to have him or be on his podcast to kind of like talk about leadership, because he has his own book. And it kind of opened my eyes a bit on leadership, just the idea of leadership versus management, just a different way of thinking of how, dealing with people. It's not, you don't necessarily need to have a official title in a job to be a leader. As long as you have one person that's following you or looking up to you, you're considered a leader. And so the interactions of what you do as a leader with the people who follow you, that's where you develop those leadership skills. And the thing is that with the classes that I showed in, like for example, the HIT program, the RHIT program, I think it's like supervisory and management and stuff like that. I remember that course, and it wasn't so much leadership. I know you're limited on a certain amount of time, and there's not much to grab and turn. Like, you can't walk away and say, I'm a leader after that class. You learn how to deal with people, how to handle certain situations, how to escalate it up to your corporate ladder, whatever it may be in HR, but that's about it. In terms of your own personal leadership style, you will not get. And that's why I tell people, because here's the thing with the test, with the, and you could probably talk about this too, the test, there's a section on leadership, right?
Yes.
RHIT. Right?
Domain 6.
I think it's RHIA too. It has leadership. Even the CDIP
it
has
is,
a section on
domain
leadership,
5.
right?
Yeah,
leadership. And so I'm like, where can you find sources on that? And some of the questions that you get and I've gotten the mock exam, I've gotten the study guide, and I'm like, okay, leadership.
Mhm.
Okay. And they give me these questions, and I'm like, where can I find information on that? And in most cases, I will not find it in the study guide. I will not find it in any mock exam or whatever it may be. I always have to
You won't.
research out.
You won't.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And a couple of my recommendations would be, so we had a class that was designed in the way that you mentioned. It was called uh, supervisory and management. And we used this book that was not even about healthcare.
Mm,
It wasn't even about HIM.
mm,
So recently we decided to toss that book and really focus on management in HIM.
mm,
So Ahima Press does publish a book, Management for the Health Information Professional, I believe is the title. That's a good one. That's a really good book. And then also the Nanette Sales book for if you're RHIT, Health Information Technology and Applied Approach
mm.
has a couple chapters in there on leadership, which I refer back to a lot because I think that's where some of those test questions are coming from, or some of the concepts. They have very similar concepts from those two books.
Mhm.
So those are really good resources
Yeah,
for HI professionals.
yeah, even with those resources, it's just like, okay, I think you need more. You need
You
more
do.
aside
You
from those
do.
chapters, right? It's like you have to go
You
beyond.
do.
Go watch a TED Talk, go watch a YouTube video, get another resource
Yes.
applicable to those chapters,
Yes.
so that way it can enrich what the chapters are providing you. Because when you ask that question,
Right.
you're only given a
Exactly.
very basic understanding of it. But if you have a full enriched understanding of what the question is asking you, well, then that question is going to be easy, because I see it a lot when you, especially in the
Right.
groups, the RHIT and the RHIA exam support group, either it is domain one, which is, I don't know if it's changed, but I know it has to deal with data analysis, data collection, and all of that, data sets. That's one of the big ones that
Yeah.
struggles with a lot of students. And then leadership is the next one.
I was gonna say, yeah, now that's the information governance chapter.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know what? You're absolutely right, though, because even at the college, um, our lowest scores were domain 1 and
Mm.
domain 6,
Yep.
right? The leadership. And that's because and what I learned recently, I revitalized our leadership course, but you need to have leadership interwoven.
Where were you?
You
You were talking about the
the
leadership
leadership.
domain, and you were doing something.
Yes. Oh, so the leadership, I was saying that I see that also in our test scores, that domain 1 and 6 are the lowest domain.
Mhm.
And I said, I truly believe that leadership should be interwoven through the curriculum.
Yes.
So because of one class, I just feel like is not enough. It's
Yeah.
just not enough. And you're right. I revitalized the course. And you know what? I pulled some TED Talks. I pulled some, a couple different things with hopes of igniting that leadership fire.
Yeah.
So even though there's but so much I can teach you in this one class, but I want to excite you enough that you explore leadership outside of the classroom,
Yeah. That's right.
right? Right.
That's
So
right.
that's
That's
what I'm
right.
hoping.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that I was like, well, how can you do that? I was thinking of the 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 internships you guys provide, like
We
practicums
do.
and stuff like
We
that.
do.
And so I think what would also help is, with the questions, at least from my understanding, when they ask me questions, they should have some form of leadership, like preset leadership questions. Or I think what a good one was, the last one that I did, is let the student come up with their own questions
Okay.
on
That's a great
leadership.
idea.
Yeah, because I
Mhm.
think if it comes, because you can only get leadership, you can only obtain leadership from content so much, right? But I think
Mhm.
leadership has to be developed from within.
Right.
And
Right.
when you ask your questions, because leadership style is you can't impose a leadership style on somebody. You have to develop it on your own. And I think by asking their own questions on leadership, let them struggle a bit. That's what
Yeah,
I would do.
absolutely.
Let
Absolutely.
them
That's a great idea.
let them brew that type of thought process, because eventually that brewing and that type of putting him on that spot is going to feel the same way when they become a director for the first time. You have to make them uncomfortable a lot, because
That's right. That's right.
what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. And that didn't have the uncomfortable, those uncomfortable feelings didn't happen to me during my bachelor's program. Like, I didn't feel uncomfortable. I was just kind of like riding through, finishing the courses, getting my A's and B's and whatever. If I'm done, I'm done, but
Right.
it's like, I think what I did most of in terms of the leadership and the networking was being thrown into, do you have a student association? So I had a student association where I was, and they said, Brian, can you be president? I'm like, I was the only, like one of two. No, I was the only guy.
Oh, see, of course. Of
In the
course.
program, like,
Of course.
you be president, I'm like, okay. And so when you're thrown into that type of situation, what do you do? How do you handle a student association? It's going to translate well as when you move into a department. So putting them into situations while they're in school, outside of the school, I think will help them. I think that's what helped me, because before I even got into the HIM program, I was already a president of a Asian student union at Florida International University. And I was doing a lot of stuff that I was just being thrown into, and it translated so well when I went into HIM. And then when they asked me, will you be president? I'm like, okay, I was president before. Let's just do it again and kind of start the process again, get to SGA, register the group, do these types of events, plan out your events, get professionals to these events, network with all these professionals. Those are things that you don't do in the classroom.
So tell me, at the time, were you on campus?
Yes.
Okay. To me, I saw the difference when teaching for an on-campus program versus an online program, because an online program, it's hard to get students to volunteer for anything. It's like, who wants to be on SGA, or who wants to, president of the association? And it's like crickets, so it's like you literally have to go into those classrooms to see who exhibits those skills and approach them individually.
Yeah. Yeah.
But those are really great points. And you're right. Let the students come up with their own questions and feel around a little bit.
Yeah. You have to put them in those situations. You really have to.
Because they're not going to put themselves in the situation.
Otherwise, you're just going to hear crickets. And so if they graduate, and I'm talking to your program, if they're listening to this, if they're listening to this podcast, I mean, if we're hearing crickets, if I was part of the program, I would make you so uncomfortable. And that's what I do with a lot of students that come to me, because here's the thing, right? So students would come to me and say, okay, I have 15 questions. Can you answer them for me? Right? They go like, here it is. Can you answer it? I'm like, I'm not, can I just email it to you and then you send it back to me? I said, where's the interaction in that? Where's the interaction in that? And I said, look, I'm going to make you uncomfortable. I told the first one, what's her name? Norma. I said, I'm going to make you so uncomfortable. Okay.
So I put that interview in one of my classes.
Oh, did you?
I did, because that at the time I was teaching the class where they had to do interviews, and I used it as inspiration, and I told them, don't be afraid to be uncomfortable. Don't be afraid to get creative. Get creative, whether it be to jump on Zoom or to do an audio recording. And I had students sending me some really fun stuff.
Good.
Really fun stuff. But I feel like, you have to give them permission to do that. Otherwise, it's going to be really structured, really based on the questions that you ask them to ask, and a written assignment. They're going to ask if somebody could write the responses to them, because they don't want to pick up the phone. I said, pick up the phone, do some cold calling if you have to. I said, don't limit yourself to your neighborhood or to your state even. You have full opportunity to call anywhere in the world that you want to.
Right.
And just see if they're willing to help you. you know?
I would be so impressed if somebody reached out to somebody in Australia,
Right.
and you know what I'm saying? Because there's a lot of CDI going on in Australia. And so
Yes,
that's one of the things
yes.
if I was, I'm kind of reminiscing as a student, I should have done that, and because of the pandemic and utilizing these type of technologies, this is the new thing. This is one of the
It
newest
is.
skills that your students and new students of any HIT program should also have, is the ability to have a conversation just like this and get creative and actually feel animated on camera. Because I remember Norma was like, she was just like, oh my gosh, very, very worried. And before we hit the record button, I had to reassure her. I said, it's okay.
It is.
Don't worry
You
about
know
it.
what? We're human. And I think the problem is, we have a lot of this social media and YouTube, and, people strive for this image of perfection. We don't have to be perfect,
No.
and that's truthfully what I like about YouTube, because I mean, people are recording in their kitchen and they're just all over the place, impromptu in the car. Nobody's saying, I need to have this perfect backdrop. I need to be perfect. I need to do all these things, just very natural, candid conversations.
Right.
It's okay. And I had a student yesterday who we had this talk because I asked her if she wanted to participate in a research project completely voluntarily. And she said, yeah. She said, you know why? Because I'm new to the profession. So it's going to help me learn the industry a little bit more. It's going to help me network with people that I probably wouldn't get the opportunity to before graduating.
Mm-hmm.
She said, so absolutely, I'm in, and I'm thinking that's what we need.
That's a good attitude. That's a good attitude.
It is. It really is. So I'm hoping we can get more of that. I really do.
Yeah.
And that's what being qualified is about. I don't want people to think that it's solely about earning the credentials, because it's not. It's about your attitude. It's about your mindset. It's about your willingness to learn. All of those things combined is what makes you qualified.
That's perfect. And we'll kind of end off of that, right? So let me wrap it up with, I think, 3 questions, right?
Okay.
And so the first question is, what does the future hold for you?
I'm a little unsure. I'm really hoping that
another doctorate?
No. I really hope that I can strive, me and my team, just strive and grow this business, and just truly be able to serve our communities, and to really help upcoming HIM professionals. Yes, it's a business, but I think all of our hearts are in the right place, and we all want to give back. We want to give back.
You have it. Noelle Dale is on your team, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah,
okay,
she is.
So I'm going to attest to her. She's great. Every time she's on the podcast, she carries. I remember the first time that I interviewed her, I felt so much energy.
Yes.
Just speaking to her. And can you imagine just kind of interacting with her, and then her interacting with clients? Just the amount of energy that just exudes. Once the camera is on, like, it's on, like, you feel it. And so I'm glad you have her on there. That's great. I know the last time I talked to her, she had a lot on her plate. She was doing something with YouTube, and she tried something, but I'm glad that she's with you and the qualified. The next question I have is, going through all of the, I guess, points in your career, being, coming from New York, being being managers from different positions or different companies, and now being an academic chair for a college, and now being part of the qualified. How would you compare yourself now to when you first started HIM?
I don't know. I feel like I'm a different person in a way, but I think I've just grown so much, a lot more structure, a lot more discipline, a lot more accountability, so, Yeah, I'm just different in that way. But it's wonderful. It's wonderful to be able to look back on the journey. I truthfully don't think that there would be anything that I would do differently. Mm-mm.
Perfect, perfect.
Yeah.
And the last question is, what best words of advice could you give to our audience?
Oh man. Okay, who makes up your audience? What, the
It's okay.
primary.
We could
Who
edit
makes
this
up
out.
your audience?
We could edit this out. But who makes up my audience
Mhm.
are our current professionals.
Okay.
The age range mostly in the 30 to 40.
Okay.
You
All
know,
right.
so
No, that's good.
but the
That's
idea, I think
good.
they're
Okay.
current professionals now. We have some students, but a
Okay.
majority of them are current professionals in the field who listen to
Okay.
this podcast and also watch the YouTube channel.
Wow. Okay. So I think my advice would be to just be yourself, to always be yourself, to continue to strive for, I don't want to say your version of success, but for what warms your heart, what makes you happy. I think that's really important. Always continue to have an open mind and to to grow, to want to grow, to always enhancing your education, your professional development, and to just learning more. I mean, I don't ever think that we get to that point where we know everything. Right. So don't ever feel like you know everything or you're too old to learn something new. So that would be my words of advice.
So there you have it. That concludes my interview with Kengia Sabree. Kengia, thank you for being on the podcast. You could check out Dr. Sabree on LinkedIn. Also, please check out our website for The Qualified by going to www.the-qualified.com.
medicalcodinggeek.com